This is one section of my 6-part fingerpicking jumpstart course. This is a course that's going to take you from knowing absolutely nothing about fingerpicking all the way to playing your first song. Now, one thing before you start, you're going to need the tablature for this course. It's a 6-part course and there's tabs for each section, and I want you to have those. So I've created a free course guide that contains links to every lesson, the tabs that are necessary for every lesson, and the arrangement of the song that you're going to play at the end. All you have to do to get this free course guide is click the link here in the video or in the description. Here we are at lesson 2 of the fingerpicking jumpstart course. Now that you're familiar with the strings, we're going to go ahead and focus on the thumb. And the reason we're going to take a whole lesson and just focus on the thumb is because the thumb is our rhythm section. If you imagine a piano player sitting down at a piano, the left hand controls the chords and the rhythm while the right hand does the melody. Well, in fingerpicking, our thumb is the left hand of a piano player, more or less. But the thumb's responsibility, again, is to accentuate the bass and keep the rhythm going. And that's what we're going to focus on in this lesson. Now, remember that whole rule of fingerpicking? The thumb is responsible for the E, A, and D string, index finger for the G and the B, middle finger for the high E. We're going to use that rule, but we're going to tweak it ever so slightly for one of the chords that we're going to use. I'll get to that in a second. The chords we are going to use for this particular lesson are a C chord, with our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the A, middle finger 2nd fret of the D, index finger 1st fret of the B string. Then we're going to move to an F chord, where our index finger bars both the B and the high E string at the 1st fret, middle finger 2nd fret of the G, and ring finger 3rd fret of the D. And then we're going to move to a G chord. And the G chord can be played a lot of different ways, but the way that I would encourage you to play it for fingerstyle and for this particular lesson would be the pinky on the 3rd fret of the high E, ring finger all the way up on the 3rd fret of the low E, and the middle finger on the 2nd fret of the A. I'm going to give each of those chords a playthrough so you can hear what they sound like. That's your C, your F, and your G. Now we're only going to be focusing on the bass notes of these chords, but I still want you to form the full chord. It's very, very important that you do so and get in the habit of doing so, because fingerstyle requires us to keep the bass going and then add the melody. That's where the rest of the chords are going to come in. So even though we're focusing on the bass notes, please, please do the full chord. So we're going to start on a C chord, okay? And again, our thumb is responsible for the bass, and that's why you're going to see those little letter P's all across this whole sheet of tablature. That's indicating that the thumb is responsible for all of these notes. Now, when we're striking the string with the thumb, don't worry about trying to get your fingernail in there. It's really not important to get your fingernail in there. You really want the string hitting kind of the pad of your thumb. You want a nice kind of thumpy bass line. It should sound like this. Okay, don't worry about the fingernail, just the pad of the thumb. So if we look at that first line of tablature, you're going to make a C chord, and you're going to alternate the bass between the A string and the D string. And you're going to do so on a quarter note beat. So those first 2 bars look like this. It's a very common bass line over a C chord. But we can vary it just a little bit, and the last 2 measures of that first line, measure 3 and measure 4, show the bass alternating between the A string and the low E. This is going to require a little bit more work on our fretting hand, because we're going to use our ring finger to grab that 3rd fret of the A string, strike it with the thumb, move it to the low E string 3rd fret, and then the thumb's going to move up there as well, and that'll give us another lower bass note. So it's a little different kind of bass option for this C chord. So that will sound like this. Again, this is measures 3 and 4 of the tab. Our thumb's going to be alternating between the A string and the low E string. It'll sound like this. Now, taking those 2 different bass runs between the A string and the D string, and then the A string and the low E string, we're going to kind of put them all together in a kitchen sink kind of a bass run over this C chord. We're going to start by forming that basic C chord, and this is the second line of your tab. We're going to use the thumb to hit the A string, then it's going to move to the D, going to come back to the A string, and then our ring finger on our fretting hand is going to move up to the 3rd fret of the low E, and the thumb is going to hit that. Okay, that's one sequence. It's a full measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that entire second line is made up of that sequence. So as you get used to it, as you get comfortable moving that thumb around, you can string it all together like so. It's very Jeopardy. If you're a big fan of Jeopardy, this is the ticket for you right here. From that C chord, we're going to move to an F chord. You don't have to do this in sequence. I want you to kind of focus on each of these chords because the thumb is really, again, I'm going to stress how important it is in fingerstyle. So we're then going to move to an F chord. And remember that whole golden rule of finger picking? Well, we're going to break it right here. Now the thumb is usually responsible for the E, the A, and the D string. We're going to include the G string here because of bass reasons. It's as good a reason as any to break a rule. So we're going to go ahead and make that F chord, and now our thumb is going to start on the D string. And for this first little bass line, we're going to run the thumb up against the D string, then move it to the G string. And that'll compose the kind of the bass run for this little mini F chord. It'll sound like this. So thumb on the D, and then thumb on the G. Again, we're breaking the rule there. Just want to make sure that we know we're breaking a rule. So that bass line is going to sound like this. Right? And then we're going to do the same thing we did over the C chord, but mimic it over the F. And what we're going to do for that, our thumb again is going to start on that D string. We're going to strike it. Then the ring finger is going to move up to the 3rd fret of the A string, and we're going to strike it to include that lower bass note, okay? So that's the thumb again between the D and the A string, with the ring finger moving to the 3rd fret of the A string when you go to hit it with the thumb. That'll sound like this. Almost think country bass, because that's what it should sound like. It should sound like the bass line to one of those old classic country songs. Think Johnny Cash. Then, again, just like we did with the C chord over the F chord, we're going to combine all of those bass runs. So we're going to do the thumb starting on the D, moving to the G, thumb back to the D, and then moving the ring finger up to the 3rd fret of the A, we're going to hit the A string with the thumb. And all of that in sequence will sound like this. This, again, is on the quarter note, so we're counting it 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If it sounds like Jeopardy, you're doing it right. Now, from the F chord, we're going to go to a G chord. Now, we're going to switch up what the thumb does here a little bit. And the good news is that your fretting hand isn't going to have to move at all. We're going to assume the chord shape, and then the thumb's going to do all the work. So we're going to go ahead and make that G chord. And we're going to start by the thumb alternating between the low E and the A string, like so. Again, on the quarter note. After you're comfortable with that, I want you to move to the thumb alternating between the low E and the D string. Now this is a little bit of a jump. So far we've only done strings that are adjacent to one another. Now we're moving across a string. So this might take a little bit of getting used to. So I want you to spend some time here because this is a common bass move. So the thumb's going to start on the low E, and then it's going to move to the D string, and then back to the low E, and then to the D string, back to the low E. In time, that'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And like we did with the C and the F chord, we're going to throw all those variations together. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to do these. I'm just showing you that these are options when you're playing the chords. Generally speaking, I kind of favor just the adjacent strings, but it's nice to have those tools in your toolkit if you want to mix it up a little bit. So if we're throwing them all together, it's going to sound like this. The thumb's responsibility here, it's going to go from the E string to the A string, back to the E to the D, and that'll sound like this. E string, A string, E string, D string. And in sequence, it'll sound like this without me counting. So there you have it. That's the thumb. This lesson is all about the thumbs. By the end of this lesson, your thumb should be familiar with moving across the bass strings and accentuating the bass parts of chords. So once you're done here, you're going to be ready to integrate the pinch, which is going to happen here on the next lesson. So make sure that your thumbs are nice and strong and feeling confident, and then you can move on to lesson 3, which will discuss the pinch, which is so crucial for fingerstyle. You've just finished one section of my 6-part fingerpicking jumpstart course. This is a course that takes you from knowing absolutely nothing about fingerpicking all the way to being able to play a song with the technique. Now, each of these 6 lessons has corresponding tablature. Plus, at the end of doing all of these lessons, you'll be able to play a simple arrangement of the tune Freight Train, but you'll need the tab to do so. So I've created a course guide which contains links to all 6 lessons, the tablature for each lesson, and the tablature for the arrangement of Freight Train. All you have to do to get this free course guide is click the link in the video or in the description. Thanks a lot for checking it out, and I'll see you on the lessons.